Okay, whanaka whakalevel, Brian. Nisa Mbola Vinaka. Greetings, everybody. Nisa Yandra. Today, I'm really grateful to be introducing Dr. Melani Anae, Reverend Alec Toleafoa, and my bro Tigilau Ness, all OG Polynesian Panther Party members since 1971, alongside many other tangata whenua and tangata ole moana, nationally and internationally. Melani, Alec and Tigi have sought to create and enable changes to end systemic racism in Aotearoa through many pathways, including activism and protest, community support and education. Their journey brings them here with us today to talanoa with us about their inspirational work that creates an intergenerational context and understanding for all of us. There is a strong, strong link between our Tautai 2025 theme of RTLB and the focus of the Polynesian Panther Party Legacy Trust. Talofa lava to you, Melani and Alec. Whakalofa lahi atu to you, Tingi. Kei a koutou, we welcome your talanoa.
That was such an emotional beginning to our Tautai workshop today. Thank you so much for that wonderful video, Papua New Guinea. But let me just, and thank you, Patty, for that wonderful intro. And normally we get Brother Alec to just give us a quick intro of the three of us in terms of some things that you may not know about us already. So thank you, Alec, and then we'll start.
Ka nui ngā mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Well, my name is Alec Toleafoa, and I think it's because I'm the youngest that I have to introduce these other the other two Panthers. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Melani Anae. She hails from the village of Tautai and has strong connections to the village Siumu and Larovaya and Apia. She is, as many of you already know, is a world-class scholar and has recently retired from the University of Auckland as an associate professor. And she often says that she never really retired. What she's doing now, she's just doing for free. And so if you want to know what her scholarship is and the length and breadth of it, then just simply Google Melani Anae, and then you'll find all this out. She is also the coordinator of our Educate to Liberate program, and also the Whakalongai Tino program, which some of you have already had the experience of. And Tigilau Ness, he's from the island of Niue, from the village of Mutulau. And as many of you already know, he is a very successful musician, and he's the single Panther who has stood on every single front line of protest since the inception of the Polynesian Panthers right through to the present. And so he's a most venerable Panther and also a brother. We've known each other most of our lives. And I also need to make mention too that there is another Panther among us, if you didn't already know, and that's Paddy. Paddy is one of the original Panthers also. And happy birthday, by the way, Paddy. I know it's meant to be a secret, but happy birthday. And then there's myself. I come from the village of Vaimuso, and from the beautiful island of Savai'i, the village of Tufutafoi. I have connections with Tutuila in the village of Amauli. What we have in common is that we all come from the village of Ponsonby. We all still live in the village of Ponsonby, and I don't think we're going to be moving anytime soon. We are also first generation New Zealand Pacifica who were born, the children of the settlers who came here in the 1940s and 50s. We are the first generation from that migration. The other thing that we have in common as well is that we are all original Panthers, the 1970s version. And that's about really all we can say right now. You'll get to know us more through the corridor that we share with you today, and hopefully we'll get to know some of you through your questions or concerns that you have, or comments you want to raise. Thank you very much, Brian, for creating this space for us, and we hope to make the most use of it. And it will help to inspire people or just create a level of curiosity that will make others want to scratch a little bit deeper into some of the important history of the journey of Pasifika here in Aotearoa. So having said that, we'll move what we normally do to and ask Melani or invite Melani to tell us how this morning will go. Melani.
Tautai. Okay, before I start, I just want to do this little exercise. I know I won't be able to see it, but I want all of you who have sons and daughters or nephews and nieces aged 16 or 17 to put your hand up, physically or otherwise, please. I know I can't see everybody, but are you doing that? I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of hands up. So what you can put your hands down now. What I wanted to show from that is that we were their age. We were their age when we changed the face of Ponsonby for our parents, our families, and our communities. Racism was blatant. It was in our faces then that the generations of youth today will not know how blatant it was back then in the 70s. So that we were their age. So Alec Toleafoa, Patty, and I stand before you as Panthers. Some people call us revolutionaries. Some people call us freedom fighters. Some people call us activists. But our own elders and communities called us moipi. Yes, moipi, which means bedwetters. And we were just kids, and we became spokespeople for Pacific people in New Zealand, our elders who were too respectful of authority to protest about the unsatisfactory living conditions and racism that they were. So this is us, the Panthers, who have done this work and are still doing this work all this time. So we have been, as it says there, we are the Polynesian Panther Legacy Trust, carrying on the legacy of what we did back in the day. And so this is we have two programs, Educate to Liberate, out to schools, and a PLD program for teachers called Our Living Room. The next slide is when we go out to the schools, and we've been doing the Educate to Liberate program for 12, 15 years, going on 15 years now. And we are literally passing on the baton. So when we go to these schools, we tell them that they are the future leaders of this country. They have the power for positive change for our people. And so we are passing on the baton to them, and a whole new generation. Now, I know that we asked, Brian has circulated to you guys our doco, which was the Sunday program, which came out in 2021, which was before Jacinda Ardern's apology. So I don't know how many of you have been able to watch that program, but that gives you a background of some of the programs we did back in the 1970s, and the context is so important of what racism was like back in the 70s. So I hope you make time to watch that video. I'll make special mention of that video because what you have on the screen above you was a workshop we did for the museum, Auckland Museum, where we were talking about the TVNZ series of the Panthers. I know some of you have probably already watched that TVNZ series, which came out around about the same time for the Panthers. And it is our job to just say to you that that was not our story. And it's yet another example across a whole lot of spheres about the lack of story sovereignty. The lack of story sovereignty to the telling of our stories. And so it's so important that we correct or address those problems. And it happens to all our young filmmakers, our young designers, our young creatives who are coming up with institutional racism within the groups and government departments, ministries that they have to come up against. So we're here today in this workshop to tell you who we really are. And when we joined the Panthers, we were 16, 17 at the time. We had to read the book, Seize the Time by Bobby Seale, who was a Black Panther from America. And in that book, they laid out a 10-point platform of how they could deal with police brutality and racism in their hoods. So as Polynesian Panther Party, we took on their platform, but we morphed it into 7 points, which was more contextual to the Pacific context. And then since early 2000s, we have again crystallized it into this 3-point that you have for you: peaceful resistance against racism. Celebrate mana Pacifica, your own ethnic identity, whatever that is. And number 3, educate to liberate. So this is our 3-point platform. Peaceful resistance against racism. We have come to learn that the most powerful and most insidious type of racism is institutional racism. So people get muddied up. They don't really know how to think about racism. So we need to have a deep dive into the different types of racism. And we do that in our living room workshop. But for now, there's peaceful racism. Oh, there are these racisms. So there's individual personal racism. There's probably the most harmful is the internalized racism. The internalized racism is when our own young kids start believing all the negative stereotypes that they are faced with and to act out on them. But when we go and talk to institutions and groups and schools, we talk them about this kind of racism, which Palangis will never understand, and that is everyday racism. Everyday racism. Every morning we wake up, it's there. We have breakfast, it's there. We go to the shop down the road, it's there. We go to the supermarkets, it's there. We go to university, it's there. It's in our law library at university. It's every day. And this is why Palangis will never understand what racism is, because they have not lived it as we have every day of our lives. And so we need to point that out to tell people that racism, the worst kind of racism, lives in institutions. It lives in policies. It lives in legislation. And that's where we have to firmly attack in terms of trying our best to vote in parties that will help us change the hurtful, harmful legislations that are there for our tangata whenua and for the other ethnic groups and immigrants that come into this Aotearoa. So that's really important. Number 2, that celebrate mana Pacifica, your own ethnic identity. This is really important because in the schools everywhere now, it looks like celebration of Pacific cultures everywhere, doesn't it? It's in our classrooms, posters on the walls. It's in our, Western Springs, Pacifica festivals. It's everywhere. But if you look at, at what's on the surface there, and then you compare that to statistics, what's happening to Pacifica people? Wow. We're still at the bottom of the heap in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of all the statistics that are out there. And this is what we need to change. So the 3rd point talks about that, educate to liberate. That is our job as teachers, as parents, as communities, is to provide our kids. So in the syllabus, we have, our kids don't need education in terms of their cultural identities, they've got bucketfuls of it, performance, song, dance, stories, what they need are courses and courses that deal with their ethnic identities. That's why I've got ethnic identities there. But ethnic identity is the education that they are taught when they come from places like New Zealand, Australia, America, where we are not the dominant group. So the ethnic identity deals with teaching our kids about the ideologies and the understandings about where racism comes from. And the racism comes from what I call the 3 C's: colonialism, Christianity, and capitalism. Those are the underpinnings of white supremacy and racism. And it's been decades and centuries of the Western understandings, which have caused some of the inequalities in our societies today. So this Educate to Liberate is getting the stuff out there. But now I'm just about to finish my 10 minutes, brothers. So sorry, I've gone a bit over. Our 3-point platform: we stand on ancestral lands, held by oceans, guided by stars, and nourished by the va, the social and sacred relational spaces. In Samoan thought, Te Ole Va calls us to cherish, nurture, and protect these relationships. So Te Ole Va takes those special places and talks about the spiritual and social energy which flows between two people or people and things. So it's not an empty void, an empty space. It's spiritual energy that is passing to and fro. The va in this relational space is never empty. It holds responsibilities. It holds obligations. It holds possibilities, and demands us to uphold respect, reciprocity, and dignity in all these relationships, whatever they are. And these relationships, for Samoans, we have to have these special va relationships with those above, with those beside, and with those below us at all times. So it's never hierarchical like the Western sets of relationships. It's with everyone and everything. So this relational ethic offers guiding principles for life, research, education, leadership, identity, and activism. Our Polynesian Panthers 3-point platform is a political expression of Te Ole Va. Our anti-racist struggle has repaired breaches in relational justice. Our celebration of Mana Pasifika has nurtured identity and dignity. And our liberation education has sustained intergenerational ties and community solidarity. Far from being separate from Pacific philosophies, our Panthers activism embodied a lived enactment of Te Ole Va, a radical relational spirituality of justice, dignity, and liberation. So this about our platform. Now I'd like to pass it on to Alec, who will tell us about, well, and Tingy, about what did we do as Panthers? What did we actually do?
Yes, thank you, Melani. What you see before you is the
Volume on.
programs. Is the programs that the community survival programs that we initiated. They are in themselves a form of protest, and they are also significant because at the time there was no unified Pacifica voice. There was no programs that were organised for our communities because we're just a very young migrant community. And what we saw happening within our neighbourhood, all the racial discrimination, racial prejudice, feeling the brunt of that, we felt that we needed to make a very clear response to all of that. So these are the programs that speak about the needs within our community as much as being protest in themselves. So the legal aid booklet, very few of us, certainly our parents, knew nothing about their legal rights or their civil rights. And so we realized that this was a great need in our community because many of our young people and some of our adults were being unlawfully detained, unlawfully questioned, and unlawfully incarcerated. And that's only because we did not know our legal rights, and also because we were looking at a very biased police department at the time. And the culture of the society then was that we were typically criminals, we were typically poor, we were typically low skilled. All of these things kind of mitigated to create this demonized picture of who we were. And so that was pretty much the fundamental attitude that mainstream New Zealand had towards us and the system had towards us. So together with the lawyer David Longy, who at the time was the probably the most prominent criminal lawyer in Auckland at the time, he also was aware of the arrest rates for Māori and Pasifika and was very concerned about that and the number of Māori and Pasifika turning up in the courtrooms without any legal aid. So he, together with us, we formed this booklet. It was called the Legal Aid Booklet. And the immediate impact of that booklet, once it was released into the community, was that there was an immediate drop in the number of interactions between the police and Māori and Pacific in the Ponsonby area, and less events involving unlawful detentions and unlawful arrests. So that was one of the most significant documents that the Polynesian Panther Party released, and it changed the course of life for many of our people in the community for the better. And it reduced the number of people heading towards the courts or to a life or a career in criminal activity. The next thing is the Tenants Aid Brigade. One of the things that was happening with our people is that we could only live with what we could afford, live in tenements that we could afford, and often these were run-down buildings in Ponsonby. Ponsonby was a slum at the time, and landlords would exploit the fact that we needed places to live in order to be able to go to work in the local areas. So they would up the rents, exploit that, and charge exorbitant rents for some of the hovels that we were living in at the time. And if you've seen that video about the Polynesian Panthers, you'll see some of the conditions that we were living in at the time. So the Polynesian Panther Party organised a response to that, and this was our Tenants Aid Brigade. And one of the couple of things we did was we organised rent strikes. This is just 16-year-olds organising rent strikes, and also publishing in local newspapers and in other publications the names of racist landlords and landlords who were exploiting our people. There would be occasions where our protection of the tenants would lead to us actually going into their tenancies, barricading ourselves in. And this was on a notice of eviction. In those days, there was no contracts or anything like it. So a landlord could at any time just turf people out, and this is what was happening. So we would go barricade ourselves in until the security firm would come along to remove us. And often the security firm that did turn up was peopled with our uncles and older cousins. And so when they saw us here, they were kind of annoyed that we were there. But it ended well usually in those occasions. The next thing was the police investigation group. Many of our young people were and when I say young people, I'm talking about us at the time, were being brutalized by the police. It often involved the police swooping into our area, just randomly picking up anybody who they thought was a suspect. They had no grounds for arresting us at all, but the often repeated comment from the police was that you look like somebody who fit the description of someone we're looking for. So we ended up going in police cars and taken to a cul-de-sac or somewhere that's not the police station, given the beat down, and then released. So we organised a police investigation group, and this was in response to the police task force group of a special force of police who went into areas that were predominantly Māori and Pasifika, and just their presence alone was disturbing, and they knew that, and that would create a friction and a tension. But what we did was we would follow the police around, because at the time nobody had eyes on the police. Nobody could see what they were actually doing to our people. So we'd follow them around in cars, take notes, and ensure that they would do their job according to their codes of conduct and just stay within the law. Um, so uh, that was a very, very useful program because our people could see that there was somebody watching, there was somebody witnessing this, and it wasn't just going to be an easy picking for the police. The police in the end were trying to evade us, spend more time evading us in doing that sort of work. So that was great. It wasn't until 1981, the Springbok tour, where people saw just how brutal the New Zealand police were when they saw their own kind, mothers, priests, regular Kiwis, getting beaten and battened by police. And everyone remembers the incident of the clowns. So they were seeing what we had known for 10 years, and it was alarming. So that led to a lot of reforms. The homework centres, many of our young people did not have dedicated spaces in their homes, and the scholastic or academic environments in our houses were very, very meagerly resourced. Um, so for many of us, homework was doing the fair hours, looking after the older sibling, or doing the cooking, tidying the house. That was homework. So we decided that we'd create spaces for young people, students, to accelerate their learning and to give them support in their learning. So we opened up homework centres in Ponsonby, and we invited students from the teachers training colleges and other tertiary institutions to come and assist. And we were very well supported in that. And some of the schools that we visited since, deputy principals and principals have come down to us and introduced themselves as being one of the student teachers that was involved in our homework centres. So that was a great opportunity for our young people to receive the extra support they needed. There was no such thing as extramural classes in the schools or after school classes or anything like that. There was no such thing as English for speakers of second languages, something like that. There was nothing like that. So we had to create our own educational resources and do the best we could for our people. And we're just the same age as these students. Paramuriwa prison, many of our families were not able to access visits to our relatives, and so because we didn't have the means or the finance to do it, so the Polynesian Panthers, along with the People's Union in Ponsonby, organised a bus program to take our people to see their whānau in the prisons that was remote as Paramuriwa at the time. It was an all-day journey to get to Paramuriwa for many people, and there were other places where, like Waikeria prison as well, where we were able to reunite families as best we could. And there are just a list here of several other things that we used to do. So a lot of these things in the last minute have morphed. The legal aid booklet shone a light on the need for legal aid services to be available for all people, and that's become the duty solicitor system today. The tenants aid has become the tenants tribunal. Police investigation group has today become the police independent conduct authority. In homework centres now, there's homework centres are popping up everywhere. We're finding, and we thought, wow, this is an amazing thing. And also, um, the how we want to put an end to prisons, but in the meantime, we still have to. The person who drove that bus to Paramurimu prison drove that bus for 40 years, taking people to reunite with their families. So that pretty much sums up the the legacy work really of the Polynesian Panthers, what we did and what it has become. And all the while in doing this, we're aware of the multiple relationships that we needed to maintain with all the people that were involved in each of these individual programs. And at times it was very difficult to maintain the bar between all of these relationships, but we knew that there was one most important relationship that we had to maintain, and that was with our own people, and to ensure that our people would have a better opportunity than than the ones that they were exposed to at the time. And also looking on to generations following them, that they will also have a better future here in Aotearoa than the one that we were experiencing at that time. Thank you very much. So I think now we move to Tingy now.
Thank you, Brother Alec. Whakalawhalai atu. Everybody, what's way man, little bit good no more, yeah. Love you long time. So protests, I think over the years we've been involved in a lot of the major protests in Aotearoa, New Zealand, starting as young people fighting for our people's rights, for our rights, for youth rights, Pacific, and being involved in all these protests that I'm going to talk about in a minute. We look back at our history, where we came from, our people in the Pacific, and I found that we've been protesting against colonialism, Christianity, because we had our own beliefs, spiritual, before the coming of the Christian Western. We knew God, our people knew God. And capitalism, well, you know, we were more communist than the communists and more socialist than the socialists, which are Western concepts. Anyway, we started off, when I first joined the Polynesian Panthers, I was invited by a young Samoan, Mapu Yuli was his name, and he said to me, Tingi, we need you. We need people like you. And he'd found out that I was expelled from Mount Albert Grammar School in Auckland, which is one of the, at the time, one of the top schools for young boys, students in Auckland. And I was expelled from Mount Albert Grammar School for refusing to cut my hair. I had an afro at the time, and I couldn't help it. My hair was fuzzy. That's my naturalness. And so from there, the Panthers heard about this young Pacific Islander boy who was expelled from a top school in Auckland. And I was approached by Mapu Yuli to join the Polynesian Panthers, which I did. Prior to that, I did very well at schools, going from primary school, ducks, intermediate school, ducks, and Mount Albert Grammar School, expelled for not cutting my hair, which is a newer cultural attribute. If you all know about hair cutting ceremonies, you should by now, because it's a common knowledge thing. Anyway, I joined the Polynesian Panthers to help my people. That was what was told to me, to help my people. So all these years of protest and our involvement in fighting the system, fighting against the authority that was mistreating us and our people, we've not finished. We've been doing this for the last 50 years, ever since. So the first protests, I remember, and I wasn't a member then, but I seen the photos of young Polynesian Panthers protesting against the apartheid South African system at the softball games. I've seen the photos of very young Dr. Melani there and the sisters holding placards and protesting with the other organization called Ngā Tamatoa. I see Auntie Tigilau Haruera there and Auntie Hannah Jackson there protesting against the apartheid softball team that was visiting New Zealand at the time. So at that time too, in the 70s, the whole world was in a turmoil, much similar to what it is today with all what's going on, as we know. But at that time, one of the imperialist, oppressive actions from the American government was the war in Vietnam. They had nothing, you know, we learned about Vietnam, so we were anti the war in Vietnam. We took on that mantle of Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer who said at that time in America, no Viet Cong ever called me a nigger. So we took on that mantle. No Viet Cong ever called me a coconut. Because at that time we were being, you know, derided like that. So we protested against the Vietnam War. Also because one of our members had a brother who was killed in the Vietnam War. He was in the artillery representing New Zealand. He died in the Vietnam War, so that was really close to us. And we protested as young people. We marched out and collaborated with other people in Auckland, Aotearoa, who protested against the Vietnam War. And we realized then, taking on that kind of action, that how powerful going out on the street, which belongs to us, to ordinary people, we realized how powerful that was. So that became part of our training to march and to protest, to write up and think up of placards and creating the placards to go out and communicate to the public, draw attention to whatever issues over the years that we felt needed to be addressed, especially about the police, racism, institutionalized racism, protest. We more or less cut our teeth in protesting out on the streets, starting from the 1970s. We were involved, as Brother Alec was saying, in a lot of the community activities that also were forms of protest. Food cooperatives, because food were, expensive. So those forms of protest, as well as 1972, we collaborated with Ngā Tamatoa, who was the Māori representative of young people who were standing up and fighting against the colonial racism at the time. We collaborated with them September 12th. How's that? 1972, to bring Te Reo, to make Te Reo the national language, to recognize Te Reo as the language of Aotearoa New Zealand, because you all know about the history of Māori being deprived and having the language taken away and legislated against and all of that. Well, as young people, we protested. The brothers in the Polynesian Panthers wanted to go out and fight the police and fight, to get the language reinstated. The sisters came up with the idea to sign petitions, to start petitions. So as young people, we went out to Karangahape Road, Queen Street, all the main centres in Auckland here, and got our people and anybody to sign petitions to help retain and highlight the fact that Te Reo was the national language of Aotearoa New Zealand. So that protest started then, September 12th, 1972. What grew out of that? Eventually, 1974, we were by then well organised, marching in the streets, learning how to negotiate, with police presence and all those kind of secure things. And 1974, of course, was the Dawn Raids, where we came up with the idea as young people. And in those times, you never did this, but groups of us went out to politicians' houses. We found out where they lived, because back then we were able to just look up the yellow pages and see where politicians lived. Well, I was in one of the groups who in the middle of the night went out to a place in Howick where we found that one of the politicians lived. Famous story. We went out there with loud hailers and spotlights. The family's name, well, the politician was Bill Birch. And we rocked up to his house 3 o'clock in the morning and dawn raided him. We didn't actually go into the house. That would have been home invasion as we know it is today. We just stood outside his house, spotlighted his house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and using loud hailers demanded that he come out and show his passports and prove that he was legitimately, legally allowed to live in New Zealand. Like as how they were dawn raiding our people. We thought, okay, you do that to us, how would you like it if we did it to you? So that's what we did. And I was in one of those groups. Nobody knew, but part of our plan was that you go to the houses where these politicians live and you dawn raided them, and then you disappear. It's those kind of actions. So once the lights came on at that house that I went to, there were many other places too. Once the lights came on, we jumped in our cars and took off. So we continued that kind of protest for a few months, knowing, of course, that it wouldn't be acceptable to our people, our parents, the elders, and also the politicians. So that was another, during in the 70s, the protests against the dawn raids, which, as you know, many years later, almost 50 years later, came the dawn raids apology. So we've been working for so long, fighting against those things, and it's not over yet. So 1975, we were supportive of the great land march, the hikoi that went from Te Hapua up north, the furthermost settlement, to Wellington, gaining support and drawing attention to the land confiscations and the robbery that was going on, being committed by the racist colonial government. 1975, the great hikoi there, under the guidance of Dame Whenekupa and Te Rupu Matakete, we as young Pacific Islanders knew that Māori had to be represented, just like how we did with the language, because we knew our language. Gee, and our brothers and sisters weren't even allowed to. What was that all about? Anyway, we protested. And so with the Māori Land March, we were involved in that. One of the Polynesian Panther sisters, two of the Polynesian Panther sisters, went ahead of the hikoi, went ahead of the land march to suss out the marae that would accept the land marchers as they went through the country, because not all the marae accepted this ragtaggle bunch of protesters, Not all the maraes accepted that. It was like trouble. But it carried on until finally down in Wellington, out of that land march, the whole issues of land confiscation was exposed. Out of that came the Waitangi Tribunal, land tribunal, until today, where it's almost completed, but it still goes on. So, as Pacific Island young majority people, we were involved in that, which our own people didn't really understand and didn't really know what we were doing, and perhaps thought, like Sister Melani was saying, we were moipi, but we knew what was right, and so we stood on the right side of history, as we know today. And from out of that land march came the land issues like down at Raglan, and then more specifically to Bastion Point, Takaparawhau, where the occupation for 365 days ended in Ngāti Whātua getting their land back. So we were involved in that. All those cold wintry nights, as you know, living in the city, but going up to Bastion Point and supporting Ngāti Whātua. And our sister Patty knows all about that too. She was involved in a lot of those issues, especially with her sister Miriama, who you know, was involved in the protests up there in the Noho and the land occupation. So that was in 1978. And then, of course, 1979 with the He Taua incident, where a group of Pacific Island and Māori young people went up to the Auckland University and dealt to the engineering student faculty who were desecrating the haka down in Queenstown. I think you might all know about that. The haka incident is what it's called now, and that was He Taua. So we were involved in that, and some of our members from South Auckland, they faced charges of unlawful assembly. You know, being a haka part of that party, that became an unlawful assembly. So charges were made about that, but the haka desecration by the engineering students stopped. And so 10 years later, 1989, there was a commemoration, and I went along to that, and it was good to see how much the engineering faculty up at Auckland University had changed. At that time in 1979, when that incident happened, there were only about 7 Pacific Island Māori engineers. Today, well, at that 10 years later, there's over 200 Māori and Pacific engineers. So the change, as far as that institutionalized racist institution, changed. And 1981, of course, was the Springbok tour with South African apartheid regime coming here. So we protested against that as well. And as you know how that turned out, well, we won that as well, because Nelson Mandela became president in 1990. He came to Aotearoa, New Zealand in 1995, and I actually met and hongied with him when he came here to thank us who protested against the apartheid connection with the Springbok rugby team, who at that time in this country, Muldoon, the Prime Minister then, and a lot of the politicians, of course, said don't involve politics and sport. But as we know, we were victorious in that. So that South Africa and us now do have that connection. And over the weekend when the Boks played the All Blacks, they acknowledged all those protests in 1981 as well. So our involvement in that, well, of course, I was one of the ones who had that charge put on me about unlawful assembly. We knew as Polynesian Panthers what we were up against, and we were prepared to go to prison. So some of us did eventually end up in prison, but the end result is, as we know today, we are very much part of that history where apartheid was ended in South Africa. So the protest never stopped, and the history goes on. And we tell the students when we go out about those stories and how we started off as young people to stand up and not to be afraid, and to you know, stay on the right side of history as best you can. And also a lot of learning things that went on there, how to pace yourself, but still stand up for what you believe is right. And what we do now is to eliminate racism peacefully, or as peacefully as possible, because we know that racism is violent. And again, there are the older members of us who still would like to go out and confront, but we realize and understand that, education is the way to do that, as well as celebrating our Mana Pacifica, our history, our legacy of protest. I mean, when we look back at our history before, the colonizers came down, and then when they did come down, our people protested from a long time. So, we're just carrying on that legacy. And educate to liberate, well, that's what we're doing today. So, our protest goes on. 2019, we joined in the Ihumato protest because, we had experience overland issues, Bastion Point, and now Ihumato. So almost 50 years later, it's still going on, and we haven't finished what we're doing. So Sister Patty now is doing this with you all, and then, inviting us to come along and share our stories. That is part of our Educate to Liberate program as well. And I don't think we're going to stop anytime soon until these things have changed. But we are glad to know that the younger generation now, as you saw with this ECOI just recent, and the climate change marches, the young ones are learning real fast. You don't have to ask permission. That's one of the big things that we learned. So our protest, we're just carrying on. It's a continuum until these things are righted, until tangata whenua gets justice in this land. We cannot get justice. So that's our projection. That's where we're heading. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Maro.
Thank you, Brother Tingy. Brian, I'm sorry we may have taken too much time for our presentation, but we were looking forward to questions. So how do you suggest we proceed from now?
You are all good. I appreciate your service and your knowledge and all the interesting things that you've done. It's amazing. It still blows my mind how much you were able to achieve as 16, 17-year-olds, and how those initiatives are still around today. That's incredible. What a legacy. And it just always, your story is, it's very heavy stuff. But it just brings back to mind those who do not know their past are condemned to repeat it. And it's an important story and for you to tell and to share to everyone. It's fascinating. What can we as RTLB or teachers or educators do to help to pass on your message?
I think I'll start off, but the brothers can add. I think, as I emphasized earlier, it's spreading our platform in terms of the 3 points which are crucial to giving our tamariki and future generations the kaha, to stand up. We always tell the kids, if you see racism, stand up. If you hear racism, stand up. You don't need permission, as Brother Tingy said. As young people, we all know that. We're free and easy in our 17, 18, to say what we want to say and do what we want to do. And all the great changes in the global changes in the world have come from young people. So we have to, what we've been doing in our Educate to Liberate is conscientizing our new generations of Kiwis. Just giving them another way of thinking about their realities. But that's just mine. What about you, Tingy and Alec? You want to add to that?
I think the thing that we try to leave with students as well as educators is the importance of encouraging our youth to think critically about their own reality, and to challenge the things that they're hearing, the things that they're listening to, question, interrogate, and learn as much as they can about the truth of what they're hearing. Many of us were brought up in environments where we were told that who we were. We were told who we were. We were told how we were going to be. And the expectation was that we would just become what our parents were. And so those were the sort of, well, there was not much that was aspiring about that. So we would want our young people to be thinking critically about everything, um, and to somewhere in that criticality to find their own agency and stand up and speak out what is on their minds, and not feel that they need to live with this uncomfortability forever, that they can use their own power.
Mm. Yeah, okay. I would say too, to encourage your students to learn about their history, their true history. Don't leave out anything, like as how we were in our school time. We learned about Captain Cook and Abel Tasman, but nothing about, you know, our real history, like within Niue and in the Pacific, how the slave traders existed in the Pacific here. That's something that we found talking to some of the teachers. They didn't really understand or know about, but we feel it. And so to let the children know that the Pirates of the Caribbean is a Walt Disney production and not a true, you know, what went on with piracy in the South Pacific and the slave trade. Why? So by joining those dots up, they see the imperialistic, the capitalistic changes in this world from history to where we are today, so that the young ones have a better a choice of choosing which path to take. Teach them their true history, which means that you too have to look at your own history, you know, learn that as well. Then you can pass it on and make the children more comfortable in themselves. What we've seen when we went up north to Taitukere, how the children up there were so confident and so proud. They knew their reo, they knew their history. That's the kind of confidence and liberating education you can give out. You have to do it yourself first, and you know, the intention is there. Yeah.
It's so interesting to ask our young people to think critically and to examine their own history, you know, in this digital world, because it's you have to really think critically about whose knowledge and what's true and what's not. Maybe they need to see it on TikTok or something like that.
Yeah.
So what are some of our, so because we're RTLB and we're educators, we're teachers, what are some ways to engage with our Pacific parents? I like to ask this to our different speakers. So how can we engage better with our Pacific parents and our Pacific students and our Pacific teachers? Any ideas on that?
I think for me, what we're hearing from the community out there are parents being inspired by their children. The parents and communities are being inspired by the children who have heard our workshops and know about the Panthers, and they are asking us to participate in their community groups. We had one community group at St. Peter's College in town, and the community came to that. We encouraged the communities to come to our talks, to sit in with their kids as they hear things,
Yes,
where we can tell people who we are and what we're doing would be good.
just specifically in terms of the RTLB environment, from people involved in that environment, is that it's a very specialist environment, and often it's very delicate situations. And I would be thinking of looking at. I don't think today, in today's way of doing things, that we look simply at the child that is in front of us, but we look at the relationships that they're interconnecting with, and if we're able to look into connect those relationships, or deal with that individual in the context of those wider relationships, then we probably you know, have more if we're talking about remedial stuff, then we probably have a greater remedial impact or effect or influence. I'm not quite sure whether that's something RTLB do, but I know it's a very sensitive environment, and the sorts of things that are needed is sensitivity. And I think if I was at school now, I would be an RTLB person. I would be a student who would be needing RTLB resource as a student. And one of the things that I wish I had heard when I was at school was mana Pasifika. That's one thing I wish I would have heard. And that would have just changed everything for me. I would not have been arrested. I would not have a criminal conviction. I would not have gone to youth court, not be part of the judicial system had I heard that. And so maybe that there's just this one thing that we say, or this one thing that we do in that relationship we have with the person in front of us, that just might be the thing, that's going to bring that person into a better understanding where they are, and just might be that liberating thing. So that's something, I guess, that happens in the interchange or the interaction between the resource person and the person, the individual. Yeah, I hope that's a good, reasonable understanding we'll have in that environment. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. I do have another question that was passed on to me. So could each of you tell us of something that you've read, or a song or a piece of research that adds to your commitment to your Polynesian Panthers mahi? So something you've read, a song, or a piece of research that embodies
I'll
your
give you one. This is a speech given by Haile Selassie, and Bob Marley put it into music. And the speech goes like this: until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, there will always be war. Until the
Tingy, Juanita asked if you could sing it for us.
Until they're no longer first class and second class citizens of any nation, yeah. Until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes. Got to say war. Until that day, dream of lasting peace, world citizenship, and the rule of international morality will remaining but a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. Now everywhere is war. War. There you go.
Awesome. And now Juanita will sing us a song. Oh, no, that's fine. Just the last question. So what is your work right now in terms of is educating students about the dawn raids? What exactly are you doing in that area?
Well, we've gone into researching more about the dawn raids. Like, for example, there's so much that is unknown about the dawn raids because a lot of the information was embargoed. A lot of that information was classified. And we're finding, for example, 200 houses were raided in one long weekend in Auckland, and 865 people or 56 people were randomly checked. Now, out of the 200 houses, the average family at the time, according to the census, there would have been at least 10 people in a household. So that's 200 times 10. And only 23 people were found to be here unlawfully. So 23 people represent less than 1% of the total number of people. And it's these kinds of impacts that people don't see because we were not supposed to see that. So we want to bring this information out into the open where our people can see the wider effects and the impacts of this. So while 23 people were found, over 2,000 people, 100% of the people experienced the trauma. 100% of the people experienced the fear and the anxiety and the brutality of it, not just the 23. So this is the sort of stuff that we are researching and finding out more about. And in terms of today, when the procedures around early out of hours compliance checks, that's what they're calling dawn raids these days. What we find is that those procedures, all they did in terms of the review was just move some of the procedural matters around. They did not abolish dawn raids. What is interesting is that in that report that came out was that since 2015 to 2023, the number of Pacific overstayers that were captured by dawn raids or out of hours compliance was less than 1% too. So the question we ask ourselves is why, if it only yields 1%, less than 1%, why are you still doing it? Why is it still a practice? And I think the answer is very clear. So these are the sorts of things that we are looking into. And we are also looking at the future here. We hear Erica Stanford already talking about changes to the Immigration Act, where people who've, even if they've been here for 20 years, if they commit a crime, they're going to be deported. And what concerns me about the future is that they're going to be giving more powers to the New Zealand immigration to be able to achieve those ends. That's exactly what happened in the 1974 dawn raids, is they gave the police and immigration more powers to do what they did. And this is very concerning, very alarming, but we don't know the full detail of that. So we've got to look at the whole thing in terms of the long picture, the big picture, as opposed to just that one little event. And in terms of the VAR around the dawn raids, this is not the first time dawn raids have happened in New Zealand. Parihaka, Rangiawhiao, Ruatoki, even Okahu Bay, those are all part and parcel. The connective tissue is racism. And that is what is continuing today. And now they're still talking about policies that are going to create similar situations. It's alarming, yes.
Yes, can I just add to that, because of the apology, there's been funding given to the Ministry of Pacific Peoples and Ministry of Culture and Heritage. There is, I'm on the steering committee of the Vaka of Stories, which is collecting all the stories of people who are dawn raided and the trauma caused. So that is being organised by the steering committee. And also there's also a full historical publication on the dawn raids, which will give the whole picture. And if I'm chosen as the editor for that, man, that's going to be a manual for all time about the dawn raids and the Panthers. So that's what we're doing about the dawn raids at the moment.
Awesome. That's an important part of our history. We just have one question here. Your thoughts on lowering the voting age to 16 so that young people's voice for justice can be heard. Any thoughts on that?
You really want to hear our answer to that? When we were 16 and 17, Tingy joined when he was 16, Alec joined when he was 16, I joined when I was 17. Yes. So if we can be thinking like that, but you need, this is the secret. We were inspired by the platform of the Black Panthers of America. They gave us the guidelines of what to do it and how to do it. And that's why we were so organized.
Yeah.
You will not make change unless you are an organized entity. So that's what we were telling kids in the schools. If there's anything in their hoods that they're unhappy about, surround yourself with like-minded people, no matter who they are. It's not the ethnicity, it's the kaha in the heart to fight and to stop racism. That's all you need to be part of a change. But surround yourself with those people and you will get things done. Don't leave it to the Pacific MPs to do anything. They're restricted. They can't do what we did. It has to come from us, the community. It has to come to this sensitization of you know, why we're in this subordinate position. We've been put there, and
Yeah.
we can move ourselves out of there again too.
Power to the people.
That's
Yes,
it.
power to people.
In closing, is there anything that we've missed?
The good news is that we are running the Ministry of Education Whakalongo Tino program workshop. The Panthers organised the pilot program, which was 3 years ago, and it was so successful amongst schools that the RTLBs became involved last year. And I want to tell all you guys that we've got funding again to rerun this program. And we were so surprised because given the cuts and the cutbacks that the government has been, dealing out, we thought it wouldn't be, funded again, but it is. So watch the space. I will deal with Brian, and we will try and make touch with you. It's a 2-day full PD workshop, and it's free, and everything is put on, and you will come out of it with resources, 4 books that all you need to help your students with, and a list of resources, and yeah, so it's a wonderful program. Please, when we contact you, we'll love.
I have your book here and your
books
other
there.
book here, and yes,
Good one.
Good
Yes.
one. So those will be all given out to all the participants that come in, and so we're really looking forward to working with you guys in the next 2 years. It goes till April 2027.
fantastic.
So watch the space. So now it's our song, right?
Oh wait, you will travel across New Zealand, right? You will go anywhere in New
Wherever
Zealand.
your RTLB
Yeah.
is. Now the secret is we
Yes.
need to have 60 participants at each
Yes.
workshop. So if you only got 20 in your one currently, join in with another
Join them together.
RTLB, and we will organise the
Over time.
venue and everything and join you.
Organise those details later.
Fantastic. All right, that's a great offer for everyone. Thank you very much for your service and your dedication to our Pacific people and our Maori people. So I'd just like to thank you for being here today. But I will pass over to the Paddy, to do an official thank you.
Thank you so
Ninaka.
much. Yeah, it's once a Panther, always a Panther. That came through really clear today. So yeah, thank you, Maro Lava. It's been awesome to spend this time with you each today and to hear your collective story. Whawhitai Tele Lava, Melani and Alec and Whakawe Lahi Tingi. It's been great, and to have time for all of us to acknowledge those of us who have and those of who will continue to guide us towards a future where institutional racism is acknowledged by all and change enabled by those of us who have the power to restore the balance. I think that you've talked to us about the power of individual and collective, being organised and the effect that Panthers had. I also think that as RTLB, we're in a position to achieve some of that rebalancing of power. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us today. United we stand, divided we fall. Yeah. Thank you.
Power
Oh.
to the
Yeah.
people.
To the people.
Yeah. Always. Yeah.